Tonight, the war turns south. Israeli forces push into southern Gaza. Here in the U.S., Ukraine aid on the line.
The failure to support Ukraine is just absolutely crazy.
Lawmakers debate U.S. foreign aid. The humanitarian crisis at the border takes center stage.
This is the crisis undermining America's national security right here at home.
Plus, fourth time's the charm. The remaining GOP presidential candidates duke it out without the frontrunner. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
"60 days since Hamas's terror attack, Israel advances its ground war against the terrorist stronghold." Thanks for joining us for Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Israeli forces pushing further into southern Gaza in a new phase of the war, uncovering the largest weapons cache so far in the intensifying fight against Hamas.
The IDF's heavy fighting, airstrikes, and ground operations advancing into the heart of Gaza's second largest city, taking a devastating toll on Hamas, but also on Palestinian civilians. The Israel Defense Forces releasing this video today of a major Hamas weapons stockpile of RPG, anti-tank, long-range missiles, and explosives, and found that they were found near a school and clinic in the Gaza Strip. A smoldering skyline seen here today as Israel steps up aerial strikes and shelling across Gaza, even as new evacuation orders confine civilians into fewer available safe havens. The IDF video showing Israeli forces expanding ground operations into the southern city of Han Yunis in close combat with Hamas. Today, the White House said the United States is committed to the release of hostages still held captive by Hamas some 2 months into the conflict.
I think there's about 8 hostages that are Americans. We know of at least one woman in that group. We're doing everything we can to try to get them released. We're constantly engaged with our partners in the region to try to get this humanitarian pause back in place so that the flow of hostages can renew.
The U.S. also vowing to keep up the flow of aid and humanitarian assistance to Palestinians caught in the crossfire. Well, right here in Washington, despite significant pressure from the White House, Congress still can't agree on a foreign aid bill for Israel and Ukraine.
Yeah, while there's bipartisan consensus that funding for our allies is critical, the across-the-aisle impasse comes over immigration here at home. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports.
Senate Republicans are holding their ground, insisting additional support for Ukraine must be tied to U.S. border security and part of any package Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer brings to the floor.
As we've said for weeks, legislation that doesn't include policy changes to secure our borders will not pass the Senate.
We cannot waste time on something like H.R. 2, which every single Democrat voted against, which could never pass the House, while the clock is ticking to get Ukraine the help it so desperately needs.
Democrats say they've yet to receive a border package from Republicans that can actually pass the Senate and accuse the, quote, radical right of holding Ukraine aid hostage. In an impromptu public address Wednesday, President Biden said the inaction of Congress is a gift to Putin.
We can't let Putin win. Say it again, we can't let Putin win. It's in our overwhelming national interest and international interest of all our friends. Any disruption in our ability to supply Ukraine clearly strengthens Putin's position.
Republicans are playing hardball, and they know they have a better negotiating position if they can get it to fail first, to say, to have Democrats look and go, oh my goodness, we really could run out of money here on Ukraine and the war there if we don't get serious on border secure funding. That's what this is all about.
CBN News chief political analyst David Brody believes Democrats will have to go back to the negotiating table on border security to stand a chance at getting a funding bill through not only the Senate, but also the House.
Republicans want concrete, specific policy proposals, so to speak, inside that bill. They don't want just money. They want actual things, tangible things that are going to be done to stop the flow of immigrants, illegal immigrants into the country.
We have to effect real policy change at the border, and that is a necessary condition to anything we do going forward.
The blame game is strong right now, with Democrats accusing Republicans of putting American safety and global democracy at risk. Republicans say national security starts at home. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. And joining us now is Peter Rao, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute and an expert on foreign policy. Peter, welcome. So how important is it to get this foreign aid and funding passed for Israel and Ukraine?
It's absolutely essential. The Ukrainians in particular are almost entirely reliant in the war effort on Western aid and support. And the cornerstone ally in the Western alliance, of course, is the United States. The State Department today put out a press release, which is standard in vintage State Department style, listing what under presidential drawdown authority is being sent to Ukraine. But they added at the end a paragraph noting this is one of the last drawdowns available before the pipeline runs dry. So we are in a period of, shall we call it, political brinkmanship, as your correspondent just pointed out. And of course, Israel is America's essential partner in the Middle East. They are facing in Hamas a formidable enemy backed by the Iranians. And I think it's in the American interest also to support Israel. So we are in a moment of parliamentary procedure, legislative wrangling, but in the end, I'm confident if both packages, separately or together, made it to the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate, they would pass. It's just a matter of what the final package really ends up looking like.
European nations are fighting amongst themselves when it comes to aid over Ukraine, but specifically, as you just mentioned, the U.S. being the cornerstone of support for Ukraine. Does the political fight in the United States weaken America's position on the international stage?
Well, we all have our own foibles as democracies who sort of bear our warts to the world, and that everyone can see our own domestic debates. There's transparency, which in a way is cleansing as well and guards against corruption. Meanwhile, some of these authoritarian opponents that we face, be it Xi Jinping in China or Vladimir Putin in Russia, have this veneer of efficiency because everything is stage managed. But as we've seen with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, beneath that veneer of efficiency and impressiveness really is a hollowness and a lot of corruption to boot. So I do think we have an advantage, but yes, our fights on Twitter or over the airwaves or on broadcast are obvious to everyone who follows American politics, and that's real. So for the sake of planning, for the sake of ensuring that we have an alliance stitched together, it's of course important that these monies pass. But I'm confident, as I said, that they will eventually. It's just a matter of getting to the point where everyone is prepared to sit down and actually take a vote.
Yeah, with so much attention on Israel, Peter, do you worry that Ukraine is getting left behind at all?
To a certain extent it is. Of course, that October 7th terror attack by Hamas was so shocking and stunning, and the drama is playing out day to day, whereas we've almost been desensitized to the horrors that take place in Ukraine because that war is now, since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, in its 20th month. But I would say that the two theaters are also linked in a way. There's one malevolent actor present in both, and that is the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's Iran's proxy in Hamas and a wholly owned subsidiary of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, present in Gaza, taking on the Israelis. And of course, it's Iranian drones, kamikaze-style Shahed drones that have crossed the Caspian from Iran to Russia and daily bombard civilians in Ukraine. And potentially now with the sunsetting of the Iran nuclear accord missile embargo, which the Obama administration negotiated and the Biden administration supports, there might be ballistic missiles as well moving from Iran to Russia. So if at least there is one small sort of narrative upside, if I can put it that way, it would be to draw everyone's attention to failures of our Iran policy.
Peter Rao with the Hudson Institute. I wish we had more time. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
With foreign aid funding dominating the Senate, today in the House, just 2 weeks after his ouster as House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy announced his resignation from Congress. The California Republican will retire at the end of the year. It comes after a Republican revolt led by hard-right members that forced his removal as Speaker in October. Today, in a Wall Street Journal op-ed, McCarthy announced his intent to serve America in new ways, writing, "I'm leaving the House, but not the fight," adding that my work is only getting started. Well, to the 2024 race for the White House, and then there were 4. The last standing Republican candidates are set to take the stage tonight for the 4th GOP primary debate, down from 8 in the first contest. Well, the first voting is just a little more than a month away, so time is running out for these candidates to chip away at Donald Trump's faraway lead. And tonight, once again, Trump will not be on the debate stage. CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson is at the White House in the lead-up to tonight's face-off. Abigail.
Tonight's going to be the smallest group yet for a GOP primary debate, but there are only 40 days until voters weigh in Iowa in the Republican caucus. And recent polls show Donald Trump is leading his closest rival in the state, Ron DeSantis, by 20 to 30 points.
I think we're in good shape with the sanctimonious. He seems to be dropping like a very, very sick bird into the ground.
As the primary field narrows, Nikki Haley is making significant gains as the #1 alternative to Trump. While Trump dominates early voting state polls, in Iowa, a recent poll has Haley just 2 points behind DeSantis, despite the Florida governor winning endorsements from Iowa kingmaker Bob Vanderplaats and Governor Kim Reynolds.
We are going to win the Iowa caucus, and that is going to propel us to being the 47th president of the United States.
Polls show Haley as the solid choice for second in New Hampshire and South Carolina, behind Trump. Long-shot candidate Chris Christie narrowly met the criteria to be on tonight's stage. He's focused his campaign on going after Trump, and he's betting it all on New Hampshire, where he's polling in 3rd place.
When Donald Trump compares his domestic political opponents to vermin, language that those of us who know history is equated with the worst of Nazi Germany.
While Vivek Ramaswamy has made a name for himself with his campaign, he's at single digits in every early voting state poll.
This establishment in the Republican Party has lost its mind. I'm sick and tired of it, and that's what's created this culture of losing.
Stakes are very high for the candidates on stage tonight, as this is the last debate before the Iowa caucus. Now, all candidates had to sign a pledge with the RNC to support the eventual Republican nominee. But there's still a question remaining if Republican voters have any appetite for someone besides Donald Trump. John, Jenna.
All right, CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson. Well, with that, let's bring in Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, welcome to you. It's always great to see you. Let's begin with Kevin McCarthy's retirement announcement from the House. I'd like to get your reaction and what you think is in McCarthy's political future after the whole debacle with his speakership.
Yeah, well, I think Kevin McCarthy will try to stay relevant in some way. It'll be more difficult when you don't have a current office, but this shouldn't be a complete surprise. I mean, once you have become speaker and then you are no longer speaker, the normal operating procedure is for you to leave the House. What former Speaker Nancy Pelosi has done in terms of being speaker and then remaining in the House is actually more of the exception rather than the rule. And in the immediate term, though, this means Republicans are going to have one fewer vote to pass legislation. They're already down one because of expelling George Santos, and then they'll be down another one when McCarthy resigns. And so until there are special elections to replace them, Republicans are going to maybe have it'll be more difficult to pass legislation early next year.
Nathan, to the debate stage tonight, Nikki Haley has been getting a little bit of a bump in the polls, bump financially. What does she need to bring to the stage tonight to win over voters?
Even though Nikki Haley is gaining more attention for the momentum that she's capturing, I think there's actually more pressure on Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis has put a lot of time, money, energy into Iowa. If he doesn't finish at least second place in Iowa, I think it's going to be difficult for him to move on. Meanwhile, I think Governor Haley could afford a third place finish in Iowa. If she finishes second, then that would be even better for her. But that means that tonight there's probably more pressure on DeSantis to make a splash and try to right the ship or gain some momentum that he has lost to Haley.
Shifting gears here a little bit tonight, actually yesterday, Tommy Tuberville lifted his hold on military promotions, ending a nearly 10-month standoff over the Biden administration's abortion policy. Was anything gained here?
That's probably a better question for the senator and whether he achieved the goals that he wanted. I mean, maybe it's a gain for Republicans in that it takes a potential Democratic talking point or campaign issue off the table. The Democrats, it's going to be more difficult to explain how Republicans are blockading and preventing these promotions from happening, and does it risk national security. So that goes away. But I'm not sure that Tuberville got what he wanted, and whether this was really, I don't think this is how he wanted it to end. But now it's over.
Sorry, we did not mean to make you a spokesperson for the senator's office. Nathan Gonzalez with Inside Elections. Thank you so much for your insights tonight.
Good to see you, John.
Support terrorists? Stay out of the U.S. Coming up, the push to take away student visas of those who back groups like Hamas. Welcome back. Since October 7th, anti-Semitism has been on the rise here in the United States, especially on college campuses, where some students have gone as far as promoting Hamas's horrific acts while denouncing Israel. Now, 20 state attorneys general are taking action against foreign students who show support for terrorism. CBN's Brody Carter reports on the push to revoke certain student visas.
These are people that are here because we allow them to be here. And if they're going to engage in this sort of support of terrorists, we need to get them out of here.
The letter, written by Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin, calls on the State Department and Homeland Security to, quote, vigorously renew vetting of foreign student visa holders and promptly remove anyone who has endorsed or espoused terrorist activity or provided material support to foreign terrorist organizations.
I would say most of them also don't support terrorism. Most people who are here on a student visa are here to study and to learn about American culture. But those that are supporting terrorism shouldn't be in our country.
Iowa's AG Brenna Bird also signed the letter.
It's even more concerning when I hear students on campus say that they're scared, they don't feel safe because of what is going on there.
In 2022, the federal government issued more than 400,000 student visas, an increase of 53,000 over the year prior. One reason could be the money generated by the student visa program. It pumps about $38 billion each year into the U.S. economy via tuition, living expenses, and other spending. Almost 3/4 of these F1 student visa holders find jobs in the important fields of science, technology, engineering, and math within 3 years of graduating. Some call that a huge return of investment as top international talent stays here. These are the universities with the highest number of student visa holders and the dollars they bring with them. USC and NYU lead the way.
It often starts on the left and the right coast, and it ends up everywhere.
And the last thing we want is for Hamas and Hamas sympathizers to be using the United States in order to plan future attacks.
While free speech applies to all students in the U.S., including foreign visa holders, supporting terrorism does not. That's why the coalition is calling on the federal government to act. Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Brody. The United States levied the first war crimes charges in Russia's war on Ukraine. The Justice Department charging 4 Russia-affiliated military personnel with the torture, mistreatment, and unlawful confinement of an American.
As the world has witnessed the horrors of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, so has the United States Department of Justice. That is why the Justice Department has filed the first ever charges under the U.S. War Crimes Statute.
The charges come as the war in Ukraine is set to enter a second year this come February. The 4 people charged allegedly fighting on behalf of Russia when they tortured the American. All 4 are on the run. A court challenge to a federal mandate on transgender health care, why some doctors say the government is forcing them to go against their beliefs. A federal appeals court is considering the legality of a government mandate requiring doctors to perform controversial procedures and surgeries for individuals seeking to match their gender identity. It's a question of conscience. In the case heard today, lawyers for the Tennessee doctors say being forced to treat children with gender-affirming care violates their beliefs. CBN Washington correspondent Hillary Powell has a story. Hillary.
Well, John, lawyers for the plaintiffs argue performing these procedures forces doctors to go against medical judgment, perhaps religious beliefs, or even conscientious objections.
So, Hillary, what part of the law would doctors have to act against to serve against their personal objections?
Well, under the Biden administration, to push for equitable health care, HHS interprets non-discrimination on the basis of sex in the Affordable Care Act to include gender identity. Plaintiffs say this definition will require doctors to prescribe or perform transgender interventions on children. Now, today, a federal appeals judge questioned a lawyer about whether doctors who object to treatments also would abandon their oath to care for everyone.
Do you object to the general principle of non-discrimination in the sense that if a patient comes into one of your members and says, I've got strep throat, right, and the doc says, well, I won't treat you because you're trans?
So we've made very clear in our complaint that our doctors do treat patients in those circumstances.
Hillary, how many doctors are we talking about that are concerned about this? Do you have any estimate?
Well, the lawyers for ADF represent the American College of Pediatrics and also the Catholic Medical Association. Members include thousands of physicians in 47 states, and they do say they will still treat people without discrimination.
They are happy to treat individuals regardless of who they are, regardless of their sex, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity. They have treated and will continue to treat patients who identify as transgender, providing all sorts of regular health care, including setting up broken bones, treating them for illnesses, providing immunizations. The list goes on and on. But what they cannot do is perform these dangerous and, again, medically unnecessary surgeries and procedures and prescribe these dangerous drugs.
Now, we reached out to HHS for comment but have not yet heard back. Advocates for transgender children argue having access to puberty blockers and hormone therapy is safe and necessary health care backed by every major medical group. Now, a judge will decide the appeal outcome, and we'll be sure to monitor any updates. John.
Thank you for that report. And Hillary, we'll be back right after the break. And finally tonight, a Detroit family received a much-needed Christmas blessing thanks to social media and the kindness of strangers. When Colin McConnell found out his neighbor Donald Wilson lost his wife and was struggling to support his kids, McConnell had an idea. He made an Amazon wish list for the family, posting it to TikTok. Overnight, hundreds of packages arrived at McConnell's door filled with food, clothes, and toys. He delivered the gifts to the Wilson family with enough extra to donate to local nonprofits. Someone is indeed in the Christmas spirit. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night and see you right back here tomorrow.